The only good thing to come out of the whole endeavor was the fact that off of the Sand Person Chieftain, we had actually managed to acquire a map of the Eastern Dune Sea. And if the star map was anywhere near Anchorage, it would probably be there. Seeing as how we'd been warned numerous times since we'd arrived on the planet that the whole Eastern Dune Sea was incredibly dangerous and impossible to travel without a map, and the Sand People seem to have the only map, well, it stands to reason that not many people would know what was going on over there. And could theoretically hide something like a star map in a cave. Came across a random Twi'lek in the desert who seemed to have, amazingly enough, a thermal detonator on his body. Scooped that up because we didn't want any random sand people stumbling across it, and just like that, we were headed off to the Eastern Dune Sea. Almost immediately, once we traveled a short distance from the Sand People Enclave, we managed to see a large hill-like structure that seemed to be blasted out, or some kind of large caves inside of it. And as we approached, we suddenly heard one hunter call out to another.
I'm tired of waiting, Comad. How big can this dragon of yours be? I'm going in.
With a scream of pain, we suddenly heard a hunter who we had just seen charge into the cave just get devoured. But as soon as we, as we approached the cave and after we heard the other hunter scream, we approached a Twi'lek named Comad Fortuna. He told us about a plan to hunt the crate dragon that was apparently living inside, to lure banthas out of the cave and have the crate activate apparently tons of mines that he had laid outside the cave entrance. In exchange for our help, we'd get a reward from the body of the crate, but the only danger was that sand people would get very annoyed with us for using bantha in this way. But seeing as how we'd already dealt with numerous sand people, we figured it shouldn't be too bad. But suddenly, as we led the banthas back towards the cave, we heard of numerous battle cries, and we were surrounded on all sides by a whole bunch of sand people. They were incredibly strong. Possibly the remnants of the chieftain's personal guard or some other force that had been operating out in the desert. Either way, although the sand people seemed to have acquired numerous grenades at the time and threw them at us with wild abandon, we managed to deal with all the sand people before too much trouble came of it. Banthas had been scared off a little bit by the attack, but once we head back over to them, the bantha fodder we were carrying more than enticed them to come follow us again. With the banthas outside, all we had to do was wait. And just a few moments later, with the earth shaking, the crate dragon came out of his cave, heading straight for the banthas. But before long, he started to be rocked by explosions. 1 mine, 2 mine, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and with the 8th mine exploding under its belly and ripping it to shreds, the mighty beast finally fell as the banthas stared on without a hint of what danger they had almost been in. And just like that, Comad opened up the beast and took out a pair of beautiful crate dragon pearls. One of which he generously handed to me. And something about the pearl seemed to indicate that it might be useful with as some kind of lightsaber amplification crystal, amazingly enough. One of the things, amazingly, we found in the Crate Dragon Cave was a pair of Jedi Master robes being worn by a man who had a blaster strapped to his belt. I found it amazing to think that maybe a Jedi Master had come here, much less carried a blaster rifle, but there it was. And just like that, at the back of the cave, amongst a bunch of ruins, was the star map we had been searching for. With the same hum, it came to life and showed us more of the map we were searching for.
The star map. Even after all, this star map is an artifact of Count.
Juhani commented on the fact that especially after her recent brush with the dark side, the actual map itself seemed to emanate some kind of dark side energy.
Sure.
I hope she was kidding, but there was no good way to know. But as we left the cave, we suddenly spotted a whole bunch of new speeders that had apparently followed us here.
Your wish?
Acknowledgement. What?
Without wanting to get into too much trouble, we decided to take the opportunity to activate some shields and a few adrenal staminas. And we headed out to meet them, and we found one man sitting in the front speeder, Calo Nord. Himself and numerous other men got out, and his numerous allies got out, and I was ready to fight him. Me, Juhani, and HK versus Calo Nord and a whole bunch of friends of his. It was going to be quite the battle. And just like that, Juhani was off and engaging them. HK providing us fire support as we both began to work our way through the Rhodian and Aqualish thugs that Calo had brought along with him. Calo himself was using his standard massive double pistols, but with a few slices I cut through his shield and he was down. He had some truly impressive blasters on him. But since HK wasn't using blaster pistols at the time, I knew I would save them as a present for Karth. But I figured before anyone else came out here, and if Calo had any backup, we had to get out. I knew if he had gotten off Taris, it must have been with the help of the Sith. Amazing that he had actually tracked me here, and it potentially meant that the Sith were on our trail. Couldn't risk the fact that Malik might know where we are, though. But unfortunately, HK and Juhani seemed to get distracted. And we had to wait for them at the edge of the Dune Sea to head back to Anchorhead. I wasn't sure what was keeping them, so I decided to go back. And they had apparently been having trouble getting over some of the more uneven and dangerous dunes out on the edge of the sea. But once they came back, we finally were able to head out. Or we would have been, but I wasn't sure. I hadn't been sure what was keeping them. But finally, after a few minutes, HK came over the hill, shortly followed by Juhani, and we were headed back to Anchorhead. I knew that our time on Tatooine was done, but then we immediately came across a new group of raids who were wandering around. Although our shields weren't particularly effective against them, and they seemed to be stronger than the first group we had faced, we were still able to take them out and take their plates for selling to Faza before we left Tatooine. Eager to get out of the desert and potentially try to avoid any sand people, I decided to kick up the speed and use the Force to help me move faster, hoping that Juhani and HK would be able to keep up with my quickened pace. Thankfully they were, and there was no trouble with all three of us crossing the desert to head back to Anchorhead. And just like that, we were mostly done with Tatooine. All we had to do was head back to the hunter's den, see if anything had happened, because we'd found so many hunters out there. Talk to Zerka about getting the attack stopped for good. Oh, I almost forgot. I ended up talking to Isis, leader of the Jawas in Anchorhead. They didn't have credits to offer, but he did give me numerous interesting pieces of droid gear that the Jawas had salvaged over the years. But with our time on Tatooine at an end and having defeated everyone who I needed to play in Pazaak, it was time to sell our raid plates and head off to the next planet where we could find the star map. Suddenly a random Twi'lek in some very strange looking armor handed me a data pad claiming I had lost it. It claimed that the man who had dropped it was a representative of the Ganaharadan, a group of exclusive bounty hunters who wanted to talk to me alone on Manan.
Well, I think I'll get... It would be... Yeah. Greetings again. You are... Farewell.
And just like that, I turned in my gaffy sticks at the Circa office. Managed to persuade the woman for a little extra money in exchange for claiming to, you know, protect Zerka's investment in the future. Stepped in to sell Faza some raid plates. And I decided to take the opportunity to unload a bunch of extra gear I happened to be carrying. At this point, I had acquired quite a lot of grenades, weapons, and other things. I didn't need nearly as many as I was carrying of, so I decided to take the opportunity to unload a lot of them on Faza. He claimed to have more than enough need for supply because of how many hunters came through looking for gear. He took basically anything I could give him, which was fine in my book, just to get it out of my life. He also decided to buy Calo Nord's trophy data pad off me that I just had on me since Terrace. I also took the opportunity to finally sell all my race bonds that I had collected from racing on Terrace. And man alive, did I get a return on my investment. I had over 100 of the race bonds at 60 apiece. I got more than what I had originally invested by a long shot. But just like that, I sold my stuff to Faza. Decided to check in on the Gamorreans. Made sure to give them a little scare. I didn't want them bothering people while I was gone, but with that, we headed back to the ship. And made ready to leave Tatooine, hopefully for a good long while. I decided to use the opportunity to maybe put some of the crystals I had found in the Krait's Dragon's Cave into my new lightsabers. I also stumbled across a whole bunch of Giza that were stuck in on the ship. Decided to try out the awesome little Krayt Dragon Pearl I had found. I even had enough crystals at that point to finally give Juhani and Bastila a chance at some good crystals. I wasn't sure when I'd get to use it, but I'd found Calo Nord's personal armor turned out to be very impressive. And just like that, we were ready to leave the planet. Made sure to check over the whole ship. And with that, we were headed out. I took a minute to decide whether I was heading to Manon, Kashyyyk, or Korriban. But I decided maybe we could take a change of scenery from the incredible desert to something a bit more damp, so we decided to head for Manon. Before I knew it, as we approached Manon, I found myself having one of my visions again. After talking to Bastila for a bit, we both realized that the star map could undeniably be nothing more than underwater, but how we were supposed to get down there was a mystery we'd have to solve. Luckily, the Republic had contacts on Manon, but I decided to take some time and talk to my crew members.
I know this.
Karth I talked to first, tried to explain why he had treated me so poorly.
No. Done.
Luckily, we decided that it was a good time to partner up and basically put the past behind us, the discussions we'd had behind us, and focus on moving forward. Decided to talk to Bastila, and we actually talked about her fighting Revan. She actually revealed that she hadn't been planning on killing Revan when she went to the flagship and had actually been there to try to capture him. But then when Malik opened fire on the flagship, apparently Revan had been killed. Decided to ask her about herself, though. But she just, and we actually talked about her past, specifically her father and her mother, who she apparently wasn't on very good terms with.
How can I help? Can I?
I figured that talking to T3 or Zalbar wouldn't result in much, but I decided it was finally time to talk more about Juhani. She talked about the fact that even on her former homeworld, Jedi had been a very rare occurrence to see. But that was why she had joined the Jedi, was because they had seemed so amazing to her when she saw them on her homeworld.
I think. How may I?
She was worried about slipping back to the dark side. But I decided to ask her about the KOTOR a little bit.
To be accepted, just.
She thanked me for including her in her crew. And that said that KOTOR usually were very standoffish and isolated, so she appreciated having people she could get along with and communicate with. Next, we spoke to HK-47, and we actually talked about restoring some of his lost memories with repairs. Thankfully, we managed to complete the first batch. But we actually...
Explanation. Answer. Affirmative.
Apparently, the man, his last owner, had been working for a company, and he had used... HK had been sent after a competing product from another company, but it had turned out to be another arm of his company, and HK ended up killing his own master by accident. Thankfully, because of the repairs, HK also became better at... gained some additional bonuses in combat. I was even able to repair another batch of his memories. But he was, apparently before the man from the corporation, he had been owned by a senator who used him to eliminate political opponents, starting with the assistant who found HK's assassination protocol. But apparently, it ended when HK went after the cheating wife of the senator, and then the man stepped in front of it, and once again, HK had killed his own master. I decided to try repairing HK again, but at the time, I wasn't confident enough in my skills, and I ended up botching it and gave up.
Yeah, what do you...
And then we pestered Candace for some more war stories.
We were going through the
And he told us an incredibly strange story about an asteroid field near the edge of the galaxy where his Mandalorian force had encountered an asteroid-shaped ship or something that spit fire at them and then escaped through the edge of the galaxy. It was a fascinating story, and I had never heard anything like it and have never heard of anything since. Then we talked about his invasion of the world Altair, and how he just punched through their defensive lines. He basically abandoned some of his forces to punch through the center of the Altair line and attacked their command ships.
The one wedge. We started by when we came in hiding in
Candace finally felt ready to talk about the actual war with the Republic at the time, and he told me about how when the Mandalorians first attacked, they had found the Republic to be pretty weak enemies due to their tendency to take cover in civilian cities and try to hide from the Mandalorians and take cover with anyone they could. But then the war changed when Revan came into the picture. However, he quickly pointed out that everything changed when Revan showed up, but he didn't seem interested in talking about it at the time. Now that we were on Manon, I decided to let Mission get a view of the new world we were headed to, and I decided Bastila had spent enough time on the ship after spending so much of it with the Council. So we took Mission out, take her out to see the town. I wasn't sure how well Big Z would deal with the, you know, dampness of the place. Luckily, Mission had learned a lot during her time on the ship. And was more than receptive to some help in honing her skills. I had forgotten how long it had been since Mission had actually come out of the ship. Luckily, at this point, she was ready to take on my old armor. At the same time, Bastila hadn't even gotten a lot since we'd left Dantooine, so I took the opportunity to give her some new stuff and help her focus her insight ever since we had left. I have to admit, it was actually pretty nice to spend time together with her. After some of our conversations, I figured that while she preached about the Jedi not having emotional attachments to others, I thought that maybe that could change in the near future, but I didn't want to get too ahead of myself. Just like that, the three of us were ready to finally head into Manon. It was a little disconcerting to step out of our docking station and immediately see a Republic soldier and a Sith soldier going at each other without actually, you know, fighting.
Yeah, what? No. Oh,
But the Republic soldier was kind enough to apologize for snapping at us after his disagreement with the Sith, which was no problem at all. And he quickly decided that he was more than capable of, and he decided to make up for it by directing us to the Republic Embassy, which was nice of him, since I figured we'd need to meet up with Republic contacts about getting to the ocean floor, since the Ebon Hawk couldn't exactly fly underwater. Almost immediately came across our first Selkath and decided to check out his inventory. He sold some shockingly dangerous explosives for someone who, you know, lived on a planet that professed to be all about neutrality and not getting involved. But we took the opportunity to buy some computer spikes and parts from him to make sure we had enough on us at all times. Came across a man named Nubasa, but I recognized his name from some information about the Selkath Zoo. And I figured a man like that wouldn't be interested in our Giza, and more importantly, wouldn't have anything that we were interested in taking. But just like that, we were finally in Manon proper. We found a lone Nikto just standing out in a room with a fountain. But amazingly enough, he actually played Pazaak, and it was time to start Manon the right way and playing some Pazaak. Had a pretty decent sideboard hand. But the man we were playing against jumped right out to 20, but we had a matching +1, and the set was tied. We were both down a card, and he was out of the gates quicker than I was. Maybe my luck would start out well on Manon, and then I went up to 19 and stood, and I knew he'd probably have the card to get to 20, but nope. He hit 19 as well, and we took the draw. Started off even faster out of the gate and went straight to 19 again, but he busted at 21. Apparently he wasn't interested in killing a card just to get down below 20. He played a +3 and went right up to 19, and the deck was nice. We got a Pazaak off the top and hit 20. Next hand went nice and slow, but he actually busted up to 22 and then went back down to 19. Sadly, I only had +4s and 3s in my hand, and at 18, I didn't have any choice. I hit for it. Played a -3 since we had 2 of them and stood. He was down in cards and down 2 rounds to 0. It was almost impossible for us to lose this, especially when we played a +-3 to get up to 20. And boom, just like that, he busted it to 27. And just like that, we had defeated our first Pazaak opponent. Finally came to a port official. He wasn't really willing to budge on his amount of money, so I just paid the 100 credit docking fee so that we wouldn't have any trouble. As much as it was tempting to, you know, use the force to just tell him we'd already paid or we didn't need to pay, that kind of thing probably gets logged and would come back to bite me anyway, so I didn't want to worry about it. But just like that, we had free reign of Manon.
Hey, Bastila. You ever use the force?
I would never use.
Come.
I am not.
Child. What the? Hey.
I have no idea.
Basila Mission chose this opportunity to have a rather funny conversation about Mission curious if Basila ever used the force for messing with people, which Basila replied with being stuck up as usual about not doing it, and then when Mission called her out for being stuck up, Basila might have tripped her up and smacked her on the ass. So, you know, all is well that ends well. It was a funny time. Came across a Republic negotiator seeming to hire an Echani mercenary for some kind of mission. But the negotiator wasn't really interested in talking to me. Entered what seemed like a cantina, but I decided to take some time to talk to a Selkath who called me over.
I doubt the Republic would be involved in anything illegal.
Man named Selkath named Nilko asked me to actually investigate why the Republic was hiring so many mercenaries, and since we'd just seen it happen, I knew it was, and I decided, it was fine.
So lay your
And just like that, I found a gruff old spaceman who was looking for a game of Pazaak as well. And we started off. The deck was kind. He busted at 22. Played a -2, got to 20, and then I played a +3 up to 20 as well. We were starting off strong. I figured if I could beat this guy, maybe he'd have some information or something for me. We were already down 2 rounds and 2 cards each. I decided to play it safe and stay on 17, but he played his 3rd card and went up to 20. However, knowing that he'd blown his last good card, he only had 1 left, and he was up 1 round for it. Wasn't worth it at all. Especially when he leapt out of the gate to 16. Played his last card to get to 19, and I knew all I had to do was beat that 19. Decided to take a stupid play, though, and I actually went up to 22. For my mistake, I'd lost a round, but he was out of cards. All I had to do was hope that I could get lucky. But luck was on his side as he got a Pazaak off the top. And I had blown 1 card for it. I was down to 1 card and down 2 rounds. Wasn't looking very good. And then I busted at 25. He kept talking smack about me needing to lay down my credits right away. I don't know what he was so eager for. I guess he really needed the money. But we got the Pazaak off the top, and I knew luck was on my side this time. He had to throw down a +-1 card just to hit the 20 along with us. But then we got a second Pazaak off the top, and he blew another card to keep it tied. Now we were in the driver's seat. 4 cards to 2 and no rounds lost. He threw down a +4 just to get to 19. And I decided to risk it on the bout. Got up to 18, played my +2, and took the round. He was down absolutely in every way possible. Hit 16, +4 up to 20, but then luck turned and he got the Pazaak off the top. I was starting to get worried. I didn't have enough of a lead to make up for my cards. Decided to hit on a 17, which was very foolish as usual. But we were still tied, and I still had cards. I decided to stand on the 17 this time, knowing he'd probably get lucky and pull ahead of me. But in case he busted, I had a good shot. But, of course, he got the Pazaak 18 off the top. Stood at 19 after having used my -4, and I knew maybe I'd have a shot. Alright, it was 2 rounds to 2, and we each had 1 card. I'd blown my entire lead, but I knew I maybe could do this. Then I got the 21, played my +-1, and I was at 20. It all came down to his draws, and he got the perfect 20. I was in pure top deck mode. Every card off the top was all I had to work with. Luckily, the deck was being kind and slow rolling me, but it was doing the same thing for him. He went up to 18, and I was at 17, and I had no choice. And I hit 25 and lost. But the third game had to be enough. Deck started slow rolling us both. Then he popped up to 16 and 19 with a +3, and all I had to do was beat that. But I had a +4 in hand and won the set. Card for a set is a great trade. Then he came out of the gate all the way up to 16 almost immediately, but I got the Pazaak 20, and he busted on 26. I finally had a shot to beat him, and I played a +3 up to 20. But he had the -3 to counter and get back down to 20 as well. I popped up to 17 with just 2 cards and hit 20. And then he busted on 24, but he had the -4. 1 card apiece, but I was up 2 rounds to 0. Maybe I could do it this time. He went all the way up to 15 and hit the nat 20 off the top. Lucky son of a gun. All I could do was go for it, and I couldn't match. He flew all the way out with a straight 19, and then I got 19 as well, and I played my final card. And I had defeated him. I decided to try to use the opportunity to talk to him, but he didn't have much to say.